coming up on New Day at Arirang. Washington on Wednesday called on the international community to condemn Pyongyang's latest missile launches and for the implementation of all UN Security Council sanctions. Top diplomats of South Korea, the US, and Japan on Wednesday strongly condemned North Korea's latest missile launches in back-to-back phone talks, calling for a stern and unified response against the provocations, while pushing for a new UN Security Council resolution against Pyongyang. Fed minutes released Wednesday shows officials are prepared to move ahead with multiple 50 basis points interest rate hikes in a move that's more than the market is anticipating.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Thursday, May 26, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Woo Seong.
And I'm Yoo Seung-jae. Thanks for joining us this morning because over the next hour, we'll be giving you all the top headlines of the day and experts' insights on some of the key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. Our top story this morning, President Yoon Suk-yeol convened an emergency NSC meeting and condemned the regime over its latest provocation.
He ordered the implementation of Seoul, Washington's extended deterrence as agreed with his American counterpart over the weekend. Yoon Jung-min tells us more.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, who took office a little over 2 weeks ago, convened his first emergency meeting of the National Security Council Wednesday morning, shortly after North Korea's missile launch. Yoon strongly condemned the launch as a great provocation, especially as it came before U.S. President Biden had touched down on U.S. soil following a trip to Asia in which the two leaders agreed to new measures to deter the nuclear-armed state.
North Korea's consecutive launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles and short-range ballistic missiles today are illegal acts that directly violate the UN Security Council resolutions and are a grave provocation that threatens peace in the Korean peninsula and the international community. The government strongly condemns it.
President Yoon ordered his officials to take practical measures for extended deterrence and strengthen the South Korea-U.S. combined defense posture as agreed with his U.S. counterpart. Yoon's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-hyo explained that deploying U.S. strategic assets, which typically include long-range bomber aircraft, nuclear-powered submarines, or aircraft carriers, can be considered as part of extended deterrence, although no such deployment is planned for now. The timing of the North launches is not an accident, and Seoul's top office views the provocation as Pyongyang sending a strategic message to both Seoul and Washington, coming just days after the allies agreed to bolster their defenses and together take on the threat of North Korea. This was their first test and they have responded quickly, condemning the launches while joint firing missiles of their own. Wednesday's missile launches mark another escalation by North Korea, which over the last 6 months has become increasingly aggressive. But the concern is over what comes next. A top office official says Pyongyang has already tested a nuclear detonation device, leading Seoul to believe its 7th nuclear test could happen in the next several days. Now that would be its first nuclear test in 5 years and a major step up. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
A senior U.S. diplomat has reaffirmed Washington's commitment to engage with North Korea, even in light of its latest escalatory actions, adding that they still support providing the North with humanitarian aid to combat COVID-19. Kim Yo-sun has more.
Washington will continue to support providing COVID-19 help for North Korea, despite the regime's latest missile provocations. Mark Lambert, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Japan and South Korea, said in a virtual press briefing Wednesday that the U.S. stance remains unchanged, even in light of recent provocations by the North. He explained that the U.S. has always viewed humanitarian assistance as a separate issue from achieving complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The senior diplomat also underscored that the U.S. remains open to dialogue with Pyongyang. During a separate briefing, State Department Press Secretary Ned Price called on the international community to condemn the North's latest missile launches. Strongly renouncing the regime for its latest provocations, he also called on countries to implement UN Security Council sanctions on the regime. The remarks come on the heels of the North's firing of 3 ballistic missiles early Wednesday, which marked its 17th show of force this year. North Korea's escalatory action was met with criticism by the UN. Speaking with journalists on Wednesday, a UN spokesman said the regime's provocation only continues to escalate regional and global tensions. Against this backdrop, a senior U.S. government official says that the UNSC will vote on Washington-led sanctions against the North in the coming days. Citing the official, Reuters explained that the measures would include banning tobacco and cutting oil exports to Pyongyang. Kim Hye-sun, Arirang News.
The defense chiefs of Seoul and Washington have reaffirmed the need to deploy U.S. strategic military assets to the region following North Korea's latest missile launches. During phone talks on Wednesday, Defense Minister Lee Jong-sub and his American counterpart Lloyd Austin strongly condemned Pyongyang for its provocations and vowed to strengthen their joint defense posture. The two also agreed to resume their extended deterrence strategy and consultation group at its earliest date. In a separate statement, the U.S. Defense Department later said they agreed to further discuss trilateral security cooperation with Japan.
Now, the top diplomats of Seoul and Washington strongly condemned North Korea's latest missile launches. The officials pointed out the tests were a serious provocation and agreed to push for more sanctions on the regime. Min Soo-kyun shares with us what was discussed.
South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin and his U.S. counterpart Antony Blinken have strongly condemned North Korea's latest missile launches. Speaking on the phone on Wednesday, the top diplomats called North's move a grave provocation that threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula and in the international community. They warned such military activities would only further isolate the regime and prompt Seoul and Washington to strengthen their joint defense posture. Park and Blinken agreed to push forward with a new UN Security Council resolution to impose additional sanctions on Pyongyang. During a press briefing, Foreign Minister Park Jin called on Pyongyang to immediately cease its destabilizing actions and to return to dialogue. He also vowed to take practical measures to respond to the North's military aggressions.
The Foreign Ministry will maintain close coordination with relevant countries and lead the international community's strong and decisive response to the latest ICBM launch. Above all, under close cooperation, it's important to maintain a strong South Korea-US combined defense posture and draw up a joint response plan.
On the same day, South Korea's top nuclear envoy Kim Gun had back-to-back phone calls with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts to discuss the North's continued provocations. He also spoke with the Chinese and Russian ambassadors to South Korea to stress the need for a strong, unified response. Meanwhile, the international community was also quick to respond to North Korea's missile tests. Japanese Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi called the acts absolutely impermissible and criticized the North for pressing ahead with its nuclear missile programs while its people suffer from the COVID-19 outbreak.
North Korea continues to put its effort into nuclear and missile development while ignoring the people suffering amid the spread of the coronavirus. It violates the UN Security Council resolution, and we strongly condemn it. We have protested to North Korea through diplomatic routes.
The Chinese government, however, urged parties to maintain restraint and seek political solutions. It hoped for parties to swiftly engage in meaningful dialogue and to explore ways to work through each other's concerns. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials earlier this month said they anticipate half percentage point interest rate increases in the next several meetings as they aim to bring down surging inflation. Now, minutes from the Fed's meeting released Wednesday echo the urgency to tackle inflation that Fed Chairman Jerome Powell had highlighted as the organization's priority. The Fed's policymaking arm, the Federal Open Market Committee, meets next in June and again in late July.
And we understand the hardship it has caused.
Now, the Texas gunman who murdered 19 children and 2 teachers sent social media messages about his plans to open fire at a school minutes before his deadly assault. According to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, suspect Salvador Ramos sent Facebook messages 30 minutes before the shooting, saying that he was going to shoot his grandmother then that he shot the women, and finally that he was going to open fire at an elementary school. Facebook, however, said the messages were private texts. Authorities said Ramos legally purchased 2 assault rifles this month, just days after turning 18, and that he did not appear to have any criminal record or history of mental illness. U.S. President Joe Biden said he will travel to Texas in the coming days to meet families who lost loved ones in the mass shooting.
It's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. Even if you're not a cryptocurrency trader, you might have heard about the crypto crash that sent ripples around the world, the collapse of TerraUSD and Luna tokens. TerraUSD is now lost its peg to the US dollar and dipped below 1%, while Luna coin went from a high of $119 to now near zero.
So what exactly happened to the once promising coin that led to billions being wiped off the market? Well, to find out, we connect with GHIAA, the CEO of CryptoQuant. Good morning to you.
Good. It's evening here, actually. Thanks for having me.
Well, first and foremost, I think this whole fiasco right now could be a little bit complicated for those that don't trade on cryptocurrency. So can you first explain to us what led to the collapse of the so-called stablecoin TerraUSD, and then, of course, the sister token Luna coin?
So basically, algorithmic stablecoin Luna, it has 2 types of coins. For one, UST, and for 2, Luna. So the idea is basically when UST lost its peg, they burn Luna algorithmically, like automatically, and put this money to UST to restore its peg. What happened a few weeks ago is that in theory, like there's a rumor saying some institutions, they borrowed 100,000 Bitcoins and converted into UST, and they basically sell all the UST in a very short time frame. So that's where UST peg broken, and then once UST peg broken, Luna starts to burn their tokens, decreasing its supply. So entire Luna market cap is going down, and Luna has Bitcoin as well for collaterals. They have 80,000 Bitcoins, but they're selling Bitcoins to restore UST peg as well. So basically, these UST broken peg causes Luna and Bitcoin both drop as well.
So do you think this crash and burn of TerraUSD and Luna, do you think it really indicates that there's a fundamental flaw in the system, or do you think this is a temporary hiccup?
I think it's temporary hiccup. We have 4 types of stablecoins: fiat-backed collateral, crypto-backed stablecoins, and commodity-backed and algorithmic stablecoins. For fiat-backed and commodity-backed stablecoins, such as USDT, they might have some kind of audit issue, as regulations are pretty strict in the United States. But for algorithmic stablecoins, it's kind of experiments. So, for example, DICE stablecoin, they've been running pretty well for about 4 years, and their pegging system is pretty robust. So just please not see this situation as entire cryptocurrency industry problem. It's just it's about like wrong version of stablecoin problem.
That's right. I think the misconception is that there is only one stable coin. Certainly there isn't. There's a number of other stable coins I think are much safer to invest in. But still, the Terra collapse certainly impacted other coins as well. Even if you didn't have Luna, other coins. Can Bitcoin and other major cryptocurrencies recover from this latest decline?
Yeah, I think if you see blockchain data, Bitcoin whales they're not moving. They just hold Bitcoins. They don't sell their Bitcoins right now. And also there are not like huge buyer in markets as well, because currently the cryptocurrency market is highly affected by the macro issue. For example, retail investors are leaving the cryptocurrency market because households in the US, most retailers, they're trying to figure out how to afford cost of living right now. And groceries and gas are very high. Europe is worse. So we have to get inflation under control first. And Fed said they will just keep hiking in the hopes and hope inflation comes down. And war in Russia and Ukraine, they're not helping. And cyber unraveling in China, Taiwan, they're not helping. So it's very sensitive time. So as I said, there are two possibilities for liquidity entering Bitcoin at this point. Either quantitative easing comes back as something breaks in the system, or some systemic change happens and Bitcoin becomes a more important macro asset. So I think for blockchain data, market data, sentiment data, it says buying, but macro affects entire cryptocurrency market, and Bitcoin is the most important asset that affects other crypto assets. So we have to monitor Bitcoin price and macro issues.
Right. And well, before we go, we want to get your outlook on the cryptocurrency market in general. Now, the market's just become massive over the last few years, hasn't it? But do you think it's going to get any bigger?
Sure. One of the important thing we have to remind is that spot Bitcoin ETF approval. There are many institutional investors interested in investing in Bitcoin, mostly from Wall Street. So I moved my home from Korea to Miami because we were getting many institutional clients in the US. They are waiting for spot Bitcoin ETF approval, and it's about time, for about 1 to 2 years. For example, gold Bitcoin, before gold ETF approval, gold market cap was just $1 trillion, and now it's $11 trillion. If those $10 trillion needs market cap came from the needs for some kind of hedge against inflation, Bitcoin would be a good option for institutional investors. So if Bitcoin can get just 10% of this 10 trillion market cap of gold market cap, Bitcoin price is going to be at least 3x from now. So just think this issue is just temporary hiccup, and keep your eyes on cryptocurrency market. Yeah.
All right. Hopefully that's the case with some of my meme coins as well. Thank you very much for your insights, and again, looking forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you so much.
And with that, that's going to wrap up the first half of New Day at Arirang.
But don't go away. We have more coming your way in the second half, and we'll be back in just a moment. share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Year. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
한번 비추지 않고 내게만 가치란 그녀는 유명한 서대별 다 어딨나 in your eye 걔와 함께면 넌 디스토피아 내 발걸음 따라오면 유토피아 나의 이제 알았네 I feel so good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
And welcome back to the second half of New Day at Arirang. Now on June 15th, South Korea will carry out the second launch of its first space rocket developed using domestic technology.
But unlike the first attempt back in October, the payload is going to be real satellites. Han Song gives us a glimpse of what to expect.
The date is set. On June 15th, South Korea's first fully homegrown space rocket, Nuri, will lift off for the second time. 8 months after its initial launch came short of putting a dummy satellite into orbit. This time, though, it'll be attached with actual satellites, a 180-kilogram performance verification satellite and 4 mini cube satellites that weigh about 1 kilogram each.
But in second launch, now we have to verify that this launch vehicle can carry satellite which act like the normal satellite, and this satellite will verify the launch vehicle, the second launch vehicle, Nuri, is capable of delivering satellites into the space.
Nuri will soar into the sky from the Naro Space Center in the southern coastal village of Gohung, Jeollanam-do Province in the afternoon, likely sometime between 3 and 5 p.m. The Science Ministry and Korea Aerospace Research Institute have reserved June 16th to the 23rd as the rocket's launch window in consideration of variables like bad weather. Currently being assembled and readied for launch, the 3-stage rocket weighs 200 tons and measures 47.2 meters in length.
Launch vehicle is all parts and all assemblies, all manufacturings happened inside Korea. So it's a fully Koreanized launch vehicle.
Engineers have reportedly upgraded its 3rd stage, which burned out earlier than expected in October. despite Nuri reaching its target altitude of 700 kilometers. According to officials, a comprehensive interagency drill was conducted last week to prepare for a wide range of emergency situations, including fuel leakages and unapproved drone disruptions. South Korea has invested more than $1.5 billion into the Nuri project since 2010. 한성우, Arirang News.
As part of efforts to transition to renewable energy sources, a global hydrogen association led by South Korea was launched. Joined by private sector associations from 18 countries, including the United States, it's designed to help further develop the global hydrogen economy. Ji-young reports.
It's the launch of the first global alliance for the hydrogen industry to be led by South Korea. H2 Korea, a local hydrogen industry group, on Wednesday announced the establishment of the consultative body, the Global Hydrogen Industrial Association Alliance, also called GHIAA.
As the hydrogen economy progresses, there is a growing need for a joint and comprehensive channel to deliver the voice of people in hydrogen sector at the various international forums. I strongly suggest that the GHIAA act as a bridge between intergovernmental organizations and private hydrogen-related enterprises.
The new alliance is made up of 18 private sector hydrogen associations representing major countries, including those in Europe, the US, and China. The alliance led by South Korea plans to create global standards for the hydrogen industry and help with the overseas expansion of hydrogen firms. It'll also hold regular meetings to boost cooperation and stimulate private investment in the industry. During the inaugural ceremony, member countries share their views on the hydrogen industry as a whole, as well as related government policies. The U.S. representative said that by the year 2050, the United States is going to see 14% of its energy demand coming from hydrogen across a variety of applications, and the country is also planning tax benefits.
We're currently in the middle of a number of conversations for a tremendous clean energy tax package in the United States that would not just include hydrogen, but a range of clean energy actions.
According to data by Chicago-based management consultancy firm McKinsey, 18% of the total energy demand by 2050 could be met by hydrogen production. The market for hydrogen and related technology is expected to bring in revenues of more than $2.5 trillion per year, with more than 30 million jobs created globally. During the event, the South Korean government also emphasized the role of hydrogen as being a game changer in achieving carbon neutrality by 2050.
In order for establishing hydrogen economy based on green hydrogen, the government will develop all parts of the ecosystem from its production to distribution and utilization.
He added that most of all, international cooperation is what will be key to expanding the hydrogen economy. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Now, come June, South Koreans head to the polls to vote in local elections and several parliamentary by-elections. Now, the competition is heating up in the greater Seoul area with a tight race for the Gyeonggi-do provincial governor. Now, Lee Kyung-eun has the details.
Following its victory in presidential election, the ruling People Power Party says it needs another victory in the local elections to better serve the public by strengthening cooperation between the central government and regional governments.
Help us work with President Yoon's government by overcoming the obstacles put in place by the opposition party and its domination of parliament.
The main opposition Democratic Party, following its loss of the presidency and as its approval rating slide in the wake of its sexual assault scandal, called for one more chance to serve the public.
If you give our party another chance in the local elections, I will make sure our party brings about a renewal.
In most polls, the PPP is ahead of the DP in terms of approval ratings, which experts attribute to rising approval ratings for President Yoon. but the election outcome remains uncertain in key swing regions. Competing for governor of Gyeonggi-do province are the PPP's Kim Eun-hye, who is President Yoon's former spokesperson, and the DP's Kim Dong-yeon, who emerged his campaign with Yoon's main rival, Lee Jae-myung of the DP. This race for the country's most populous province is shaping up to be as tight as the presidential election, which saw the slimmest margin in history. Lee Jae-myung himself, who was runner-up in the presidential race, is trying to redeem himself through a parliamentary by-election in Incheon's Gyeonggu district. But this race, which was once a sure win for him, is now in doubt, with the PPP's Yoon Hyung-sun catching up.
I've lived here for 25 years serving the community as a doctor. This is my biggest strength as a candidate.
I once represented the whole country as a presidential candidate. I may lack roots in the region, but I have a great deal of experience.
Unfortunately, the candidates won't be able to gauge public sentiment starting Thursday, when polls can no longer be published ahead of 2 days of early voting on Friday and Saturday. Young-eun, Arirang News.
It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. North Korea fired 3 ballistic missiles less than a day after US President Joe Biden left the region following his summits in South Korea and Japan. It was the first test of Seoul and Washington's strengthened deterrence after the first summit between new South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and President Joe Biden last weekend. Now, as the two allies coordinate in all realms in national security, diplomacy and defence, along with Tokyo to take a joint response against North, we speak with In Sang-woo, Director General of North American Affairs at South Korea's Foreign Ministry, and he joins us in studio today. Very warm welcome to you, Director General. It's lovely to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It must have been quite a day for you yesterday.
It was.
Well, yes, so North Korea fired 3 ballistic missiles, of course, on Wednesday, and I believe almost immediately responding very quickly, your Minister Park Jin, he held phone talks with the US's Antony Blinken, and I believe you must have been in the room or in the loop somehow. And well, my first question is, were the allies prepared for this kind of scenario?
Yes, I did actually sit in the during the phone conversation between my minister and Secretary Blinken. It happened 2 hours right after the touchdown of President Biden's plane back in Washington, D.C. So yes, the two foreign ministers, they talked extensively on the measures that we should take. But first of all, they condemned in the strongest terms the provocation by North Korea, which is totally unacceptable and a blatant violation of international laws and resolutions that were taken at the UN Security Council. So we are coordinating very closely, monitoring what's happening in North Korea. So you can be rest assured that the Korea and U.S. militaries, they're also on high alert. We are prepared to take on whatever scenarios that might develop, and also at the same time, we leave our door open to North Korea. We've always said that there's no precondition to talking with North Korea, so we just hope that the North Koreans will focus more on the pandemic that is unraveling in their country and not, revert back to their old tactics of making provocations in this region.
And well, you just said that you'd be prepared for any possible scenario. And one of the quite concerning scenarios happened to be, well, the presidential office, Mr. Yoon's office said yesterday that North Korea appears to be preparing for a 7th nuclear test. And well, how are Seoul and Washington really coordinating on that? Are we prepared?
Yes, that is also a very worrisome scenario that we, as I told you, our militaries are very closely monitoring what's happening in North Korea, and we are we're already prepared for anything that might happen again in the near future. And once again, we are in complete unison, not just Korea, U.S., but also with Japan and the international community as a whole. I know that our representative, our ambassador at the UN is working very closely with our allies and partners to come up with another resolution at the Security Council to really show the unity, the one voice that the international community is making to condemn North Korea for all the provocations that it's making, and to really deter North Korean provocations.
And at the recent summit between Presidents Yoon and Joe Biden over the weekend, they came out with this joint statement, of course, which you, of course, worked on. And some of the key elements of that was extended deterrence and really strengthening that ironclad alliance, really. And it said that Seoul and Washington are considering the placement or deployment of strategic assets. So I suppose in light of what's been happening over the past 24 hours, what kind of measures are you considering? What kind of strategic assets would you be considering deploying to South Korea?
Yes, it was included in the joint statement that was adopted at the summit, and it says expressly that the U.S. will use the full range of its defense capabilities, including nuclear, conventional, and missile defense, and as well as to work closely together on beefing up our extended deterrence. And with that in mind, we actually agreed to reactivate the EDSCG. It's an acronym for Extended Deterrence Strategy Consultation Group, which is actually a 2+2, meaning the Foreign Ministry as well as the Defense Ministry together, on both sides, getting together to discuss exactly the kind of measures that we'll be taking in strengthening our extended deterrence. And this mechanism was actually set up first back in 2016, but unfortunately after its second meeting, it has not been convened for the past 5 years. So we think that it is really the appropriate time to reactivate this mechanism, and this is where we'll be talking extensively on what kind of measures, what kind of specific or additional measures that will be taken in terms of strengthening our extended deterrence.
Right, and these were some of the very key measures that we now so obviously need at this point, right? Made at this rather historic summit, actually, just last weekend, which you organised, Director General. Now, it was quite remarkable, really. We had President Joe Biden rushing here, just not even a fortnight after President Yoon was inaugurated, and they held a summit outside of Cheongwade, the former presidential office, to the new Yongsan complex. And what really was the significance of this summit?
Yes, yes, indeed. The president's visit by President Biden happened just after 10 days after our inauguration of our new president. So I think it's pretty much the shortest time frame within which we had a Korea-U.S. summit in our history after the inauguration of a new administration. So it was really historic. And of course, President Biden was the first official head of state to make a official visit to our new presidential office in Yongsan. And I could tell you that it was the two leaders, when they met, it was a great meeting of minds with similar outlook and similar values, because they really, I think they were able to formulate a real trusting relationship, because they both have this clear belief, like steadfast belief in our shared values, core values of freedom, democracy, and human rights.
I think with this summit, what was quite remarkable was that we saw very traditional security and simply trade ties really evolving into something more across diverse fields. It's now become something of a value-based alliance, Director General. And what would you say are some of the most successful outcomes of this meeting that you'll be prioritizing and pursuing?
Yes, it's hard to really pinpoint out just a couple of elements from this summit, because the statement that we were able to produce at the end of the summit was really comprehensive, and it comprises pretty much all areas that you can think of in furthering Korea-U.S. cooperation. So we start out with the Korean Peninsula, as we talked before we talked about the extended deterrence, how we can further strengthen our alliance. Initiate discussions on expanding exercises. But looking beyond Korean Peninsula, we also talked about the regional challenges and what Korea and the U.S. can do together, especially in terms of the economic security issues that really have become salient in this time and age. And beyond the regional issues, we also talked about how Korea and the U.S. can tackle global issues together, such as the pandemic, the climate change challenges, and so forth.
And well, even before the summit, your minister was very busy trying to really bolster the bilateral ties with Japan as well. And in this summit with President Biden, President Yoon also, they pledged in their joint statement to bolster the three-way relationship between them. So what are some key priority areas going forward?
Yes, Korea, U.S., Japan trilateral cooperation is really important. The Yoon administration has made one of the top priorities to really strengthen our trilateral cooperation, because there's so much we can do, all three of us together. As you can recall, this trilateral cooperation first started back in the 90s when we were facing, again, the North Korean threat. Back then it was called TCOG. But it has evolved now. Now it's not just dealing with North Korea, but us three together dealing with regional and global issues. And it's actually in the joint statement that we adopted that the three of us will cooperate closely together, not only on North Korea-related issues, but also on economic challenges in the region.
And of course, the foreign minister, your minister Park Jin, has really stressed the importance of, well, he said that he's going to pursue national interest in diplomacy for South Korea. And well, for the longest time though, when it came to the question of national interest, it always seems to have been split between security sort of interests and economic interests. And that always came down to the question and also the pressure on South Korea to choose between its strongest security ally, the United States, and its largest trading partner, China. But is it that simple, though? Or is this basically a false dilemma?
No, I mean, a lot of people talk about how we're faced with a stark choice, how we're stuck between a hard and a rock place. But no, I disagree respectfully with that view, because, Korea-U.S. relationship and Korea-China relationship, they're not mutually exclusive. Of course, with the U.S., we have a strong alliance. The U.S. is our only treaty ally, and it is the backbone of our foreign policy. But at the same time, our relationship with China, we have a really great relationship. China is our biggest trading partner. It's our closest neighbor, and we're celebrating 30 years of diplomatic relations, establishment of our diplomatic relations this year. And our new government has repeatedly said that we'll pursue a really healthy, strong relationship with China too, based on mutual respect. And we're talking constantly with our Chinese counterparts. So, bottom line is that we can develop our relationship with U.S. and at the same time with China.
Right, so mutual respect really being the key word there. And well, although in recent years, there have been growing tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, and various countries have been coming up with their own Indo-Pacific strategies. Even the Europeans have it, right? So South Korea is rather late to the game, if you think about it. While European countries, they seem more concerned about maritime security for their economic interests, and then we have the Quad countries who are very strongly aligned with the United States in terms of dealing with their relations with China. But where will South Korea position itself in the Indo-Pacific? And the key question of, will we participate in the Quad activities?
Well, first of all, let's just say that we weren't absent in the region. For the past 5 years, we had our southern 신남방 정책, new southern policy in place, and it really focuses primarily on our relationship with ASEAN countries. So, but with this new administration, I think what we're trying to do now is really expand the scope of our cooperation, not just in terms of the areas, but also the geographical outreach of our policies. So it was actually included in the joint statement that we adopted at the summit. Our president, he announced that we will be pursuing our own Indo-Pacific strategy. And President Biden welcomed our initiative. And so this is in the making. Actually, my foreign minister, Park Shin, he made a formal announcement 2 days ago at the foreign ministry that we will be now embarking on this process of making our own Indo-Pacific strategy. And there's actually an Indo-Pacific team put in place under my jurisdiction, actually. So I have another team in my bureau, which is fantastic. So we'll be working with our allies, our partners, and stakeholders, and other, the business community to really come up with our own brand of Indo-Pacific strategy.
Well, we'll keep badgering you for details later on that, for previews. And well, I think that really goes to show how South Korea is really expanding its role in the region, in the world, with the president having said in his inaugural speech as well that South Korea is going to play a pivotal role in world affairs in his previous essays too. And well, really, there's been quite a lot of attention on how South Korea has evolved from this shrimp among whales, as it's called itself, surrounded by greater, stronger powers, to something more. And now it seems that we're something of a semiconductor power with, wielding a substantial amount of with soft power as well. So in terms of going forward, well, how do you think South Korea is really going to expand its role in the world? I mean, how will you incorporate this vision that President Yoon has into your foreign policy?
That's exactly the central thinking of the new government's foreign policy. We have this vision, this initiative called the Global Pivotal State. So really, we're going to go beyond the Korean Peninsula and reach out to all corners of the world to really see what we can do, how we can contribute to the freedom, peace, and prosperity of the international community. So I guess what we're going to do is to come up with different strategies that are tailor-made for all these different regions of the world, and in the Pacific region being one of the most important regions. That's where we'll be focusing primarily at the time for the time being. And I'm really very excited that Korea will be stepping up and doing its part to make a world a better place. And what I personally think that there's a lot that Korea can bring as a global pivotal state, because it is a cliche, but it is a fact that Korea is probably the only country in the whole wide world that was able to build an economy from the rubbles of a horrific war, and at the same time become a full-fledged democracy. And this actually really, I think it does inspire other countries, other developing countries, other underdeveloped countries that probably were frustrated at some point in their history, but when they see us, they see a possibility. They can project themselves when they see us that they too can become the second Korea. And that's actually what happened when I was in Madagascar. That was my previous posting was in Madagascar as a Korean ambassador there, and the Malagasy people, we call them the Malagasy, and that's what they talked about when they came to me and when I met all the people there. Really, Korea is the embodiment of possibility, of future hope, I think. So I don't know how we're going to do this, but I would like to translate that into concrete strategy and policy in the process of making our Indo-Pacific strategy.
I certainly remember how you were coordinating all these COVID-19 supplies and also working with the Madagascan authorities to really provide access to good healthcare and really enabling this, South Korea's reach there as well with our response to COVID-19 also being shared as a good policy there in Madagascar as well. And in terms of going forward, really, South Korea really is no longer shrimp-sized, but it's really in the making of our foreign policy, and where we actively endorse your efforts in terms of launching South Korea to the greater international stage. And well, thank you so much for your time today, Director General.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you in the studio. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the UK, an official report detailing a series of illegal parties at the British Prime Minister's Downing Street residence has seen lawmakers confronting Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The report describes events that took place during the country's COVID-19 lockdown measures, where ordinary citizens couldn't socialize outside their homes or even attend funerals for loved ones. Released on Wednesday, it includes photos of the parties, some of which the Prime Minister attended. Johnson has received criticism and renewed calls for his resignation from lawmakers, including those from his own party. Although he says he takes full responsibility for the incidents, Johnson has refused to step down. In India's northeast Assam state, floods and landslides over the last 10 days have killed at least 25 people. Officials on Tuesday also say more than 650,000 people have been displaced from their homes. Amid heavy rain, the Brahmaputra River, one of the largest rivers in the world, burst its banks in Assam, submerging over 1,800 villages in 26 districts this month. Authorities have set up 366 relief camps across 20 districts, providing temporary shelter for more than 95,000 people. Weather forecasts predict further thunderstorms in the state over the next 10 days. Looking to Afghanistan now, where several explosions in the capital Kabul and the north of the country on Wednesday killed at least 14 people. An explosion at a mosque in the capital killed at least 5 worshippers and injured 22. And 3 bombings of minivans in the country's northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif killed 9 passengers, with another 15 injured. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the explosions, but according to reports, they showed signs linking them to an affiliate of the Islamic State group, known as ISIS-K. In a move to more aggressively protect the Amazon rainforest, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is increasing fines for environmental crimes. Bolsonaro signed a decree on Tuesday which will see stricter measures against those falsifying documents to cover up illegal logging. It also details heavier consequences for repeat environmental offenders. The measures to combat illegal deforestation also include penalties for unauthorized hunting, fishing, and pollution. The decree goes into effect immediately and marks one of the first concrete steps by Bolsonaro's government to bolster Amazon protections, following its commitment to end illegal deforestation by 2028. Turning over to Peru, where clowns took to the capital street to spread cheer on Wednesday. The event celebrated Peru's traditional Clown Day and saw big shoes, colorful faces, and original wigs being worn in a bid to bring smiles to the Lima locals. Peruvians have celebrated Clown Day since 1987 as a tribute to the late clown José Álvarez Vélez, known as the Clown of the Poor. Going by the name Tony Perejil, Vélez used to carry a multicolored tent and visit Lima neighborhoods in the 1980s to spread joy. He eventually spent his last days alone and bedridden in a hospital. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
And that concludes our newscast for this hour, but we'll be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks again for tuning in with us. Stick around for more updates throughout the day. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are, and as always, take care.